My parents gave my sister a gift of $400,000 for her wedding. They said they would pay for mine too, but then they unexpectedly sent me a bill 2 days later. I paid and stopped talking to them, but now my sister is yelling at my door. I didn't have a great relationship with my parents, but it wasn't awful either. They always liked my sister Sarah more, but I got used to it. Sarah, who is now 32 years old, was always the favorite child, and I, at 28, was used to being less noticed compared to her. She had nicer clothes and received more attention, while I wore second-hand clothes and worked part-time jobs since I was 16 to buy the things I desired. I didn't complain much. I realized that my parents didn't have to give me more than the essentials, and I felt proud of being self-sufficient. The big surprise was when Sarah got married 3 years ago. Her parents gave her and her husband a large sum of $400,000 as a wedding present. They used the money to purchase a lovely house in a fancy area. At that moment, I was truly happy for her, even though it hurt a bit. I had my own things happening. I was doing great as a computer programmer, had saved a good amount of money, and was in a relationship with Tom, who would later become my spouse. I thought my turn would come, and I didn't focus on the fact that my parents never gave me as much as they gave Sarah. In the end, it took me by surprise. Jump to last year when Tom asked me to marry him. I was extremely happy. We had been a couple for a long time, and he was everything I wanted in a partner. We organized a simple wedding because we wanted to save money for the future. Neither of us wanted to blow all our savings on a single day, even if it was important. We had planned to spend about $36,000, which seemed like a fair amount for the elegant wedding we envisioned, not too extravagant. I was surprised when my parents said they would cover all the costs of the wedding. I felt moved. It seemed like they were finally acknowledging my importance. They looked excited, asking about places and people who provide services, and they seemed truly interested in offering assistance. I didn't pay much attention to the quantity. I thought they had helped Sarah a lot, so maybe they also wanted to help me. I didn't think they would give as much as they did for Sarah, but their offer to pay for the wedding was very kind. The wedding day was wonderful. We had a small and cozy celebration with our loved ones, just the way we wanted. My parents gave speeches, danced with us, and seemed genuinely happy. For the first time in a while, I felt like I was finally being treated fairly and appreciated. Tom and I were going to start our honeymoon next week, but we needed to finish some work tasks before we could go. 2 days after the wedding, my father sent me an email. It wasn't a nice message or a wedding gift card as I had thought it would be. Instead, they received a detailed list of expenses in a PDF document, showing every cost they had covered for the wedding. The email was brief and unfriendly. "Please resolve this as soon as possible. Your mom and I are waiting for you to pay quickly." I looked at the screen in shock. The bill came to $35,463.89, including every flower arrangement and appetizer. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Tom saw me sitting there, completely still. When I showed him the email, he became very angry. It wasn't about the money. We could pay for it if necessary. However, that wasn't the main idea. My parents had offered to cover the costs of the wedding. I didn't request them to pay for anything. They came to me, gave it as a present, and were even eager to help with the planning. The more I thought about it, the more upset I became. This was not only about the money, but also about many years of being treated as inferior to Sarah. When she got married, they gave her $400,000 as a gift, no strings attached. They never requested her to return any money. Now, they were basically charging me for my wedding as if it were a loan. It seemed like all the feelings from years of being treated unfairly had led to this one unkind action. The following morning, after staying up all night discussing everything with Tom, I paid my parents the full amount by writing them a check and also sent them a letter. I didn't want to talk to them face to face because I knew I wouldn't be able to control my feelings, and I didn't want things to escalate into a shouting argument. In the letter, I described how much I was suffering. I told them that I had been on my own since I was 16, supporting myself while they gave everything to Sarah. I mentioned that when they offered to pay for the wedding, I thought they were showing me the same love and care they always showed my sister. Instead, they caught me by surprise. I didn't hesitate. I told them that for a long time I had ignored many things and never mentioned how they treated Sarah and me differently. However, what I couldn't tolerate was this unfair deception. They made me think they were giving me a present, but then asked me to pay them back as if I were not their daughter. I also wrote that this would be the last financial interaction we would ever have. After that, I decided to reject any more help, support, or gifts from them. I clearly stated that I didn't want anything from them in the future. Not even any inheritance. I said they could give everything to Sarah, just like they had done before. I mailed the check and letter and blocked their phone numbers. I needed some room. Tom agreed with my choice, and I felt relieved after sending everything. But then, they stopped communicating. For days I heard nothing from them, which only fueled the fire for me. Then the messages from extended family started pouring in. Relatives and family friends who live far away started calling and texting me, saying I was unappreciative and overly dramatic. They told me that my parents had helped me a lot and that I was exaggerating things. Sarah also called me, shouting because she believed I was causing problems within the family. She told me I should have simply paid the bill without complaining. Sarah always supported them. And why wouldn't she do it? I haven't answered any of them. I don't have anything to say. On one side, I feel right about what I did. After years of being treated as second best, this felt like the last straw. And I wanted to defend myself. However, I also question whether I am reacting too strongly. Am I overreacting? Was it wrong of me to think they would treat my wedding the same way they did for Sarah's? Should I have just accepted it, paid the bill, and moved forward? Tom's family has been incredibly supportive through all of this. His parents were very shocked when they found out about what my parents did, and they had been visiting us every day. However, the frequent messages from my family are beginning to make me feel tired. I'm questioning whether I made the right decision. Did I do this incorrectly? Should I have attempted to speak with my parents before deciding to stop communicating with them? Or was I right to finally draw a line after years of feeling like I wasn't as valued as Sarah? Now I am truly stuck, and I am not sure if I'm the one in the wrong. I feel like I had the right to be upset and defend myself, but I'm worried I may have caused a permanent division in my family. Perhaps I should have approached the situation in another way. Do you have any thoughts or advice? Update 1. Since my last message, things have gotten worse. I didn't know that sending the check and letter would cause so many things to happen, but that's where we are now. Yesterday morning, I received an email from my mom when I woke up. It got through because she used her work email, which I hadn't stopped yet. The email was lengthy and full of self-importance. She said that the bill they sent me was not supposed to be taken seriously. She said they never planned to deposit the check. She said it was all about learning to be responsible with money. They wanted to see how I would react. Once they thought I had understood, they were going to destroy the check and give me a $100,000 gift as a wedding present. I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the page. A lesson from life? What kind of parents trick their adult daughter like this? After reading that, it became even clearer that it wasn't about love or fairness, but about control. They wanted to see if I would resist or simply obey without thinking. It seemed like a way to control and hurt. Without thinking twice, I deposited the check using my phone. I was not going to allow them to destroy it after this class. I wanted to cash the check and make them understand the impact of what they did. After my mom emailed me, I quickly sent her a brief response. I kept it simple and direct. Thank you for confirming that this was indeed a deliberate test rather than a misunderstanding. After I sent it, I also blocked her professional email address. I knew there would be more attempts to contact me, and I wasn't interested in any more games or so-called lessons. Later that night, things got even more intense. Sarah came to my apartment without telling me beforehand. She began to bang on my door and shout my name. I didn't respond right away, hoping she would stop and go away, but that didn't happen. Instead, she began yelling from behind the door, telling me I was acting immature and blowing the situation out of proportion. She mentioned that our parents were trying to help me learn to be responsible because they were concerned about how I spent money. That comment from Sarah really made me angry. This was the woman who never paid her own phone bill, never worked without my parents' help, and still had the nerve to give me advice about managing money. While she kept talking loudly, I silently began to record everything with my phone. I didn't know what would happen next, but I wanted to have evidence in case things got even more complicated. Sarah kept talking about how I was causing problems in the family over something small, and she said I should just say sorry to our parents and let it go. She said they never wanted to harm me and always did their best for both of us. She kept saying I was exaggerating and that everything that happened was my fault. I didn't respond. I didn't open the door. I sat quietly, feeling very angry. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, she left, but not before calling me selfish and accusing me of trying to cut ties with the family over money. After she left, I sat quietly for some time, feeling the heaviness of it all. Sarah's sudden display of anger just confirmed what I had known for a long time: she would always support them, no matter how unfair or painful their behavior was. That evening, I got more messages from relatives. It seems that after Sarah couldn't talk to me, she went directly to my parents, and now they are getting ready to help. My phone was filled with messages from my aunts, uncles, and some family friends. Most of the messages I receive are similar. They say I am ungrateful, blame me for creating unnecessary problems, and tell me to say sorry to my parents for how I behave towards them. One message in particular stuck out to me. It was from a relative I hadn't heard from in a long time. He said I was fortunate to have parents who cared enough to teach me these things, and that I should appreciate that they were willing to spend a lot on my wedding. She finished the message by saying that I was fortunate to have parents who cared about being part of my life. I was surprised by how fast everyone had started to act against me. It seemed like everyone agreed with my parents just because they had money and influence. No one paid attention to the emotional manipulation or the years of favoritism that had happened before this. All they noticed was that I was refusing my parents' supposed kindness, and that was sufficient for them to support the other side. At this time, Tom was beginning to feel concerned about the impact this was having on me. He kept suggesting that I take a break from social media and put my phone away for a bit to find some peace. He tried to make me feel better by saying I hadn't done anything wrong. He made me remember all the times my parents had treated Sarah better than me, and how they had always used money to control us both. The most annoying thing was that I couldn't find any clear answers. My parents did not try to explain more. They really thought their side of the story was true, portraying themselves as the parents who were not understood and were only trying to assist. I was the ungrateful daughter who exaggerated things, and I began to think about whether I should have acted differently. Perhaps instead of sending that letter and cutting off communication, I should have talked to them face to face. But I knew how those talks usually went. They would change things around until I ended up saying sorry for being upset in the beginning. It was a pattern I had been trapped in for a long time, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to experience it once more. Anyways, for now I'm trying to focus on the life Tom and I are building together. Right now, there isn't much we can do except hope for things to improve, I suppose. Update 2. Hello everyone, I wanted to begin by thanking each one of you for your replies. Reading what you wrote, your suggestions, and your own experiences really helped me understand. The past few days have been full of different feelings, and your support has been very important to me. Although I have been trying to remain resilient, the situation has once again changed. Unexpectedly. A few days after Sarah came to see me, my dad's brother, my uncle, called me. I hadn't talked to him for a long time, and to be honest, I didn't know what to anticipate. He has never been very connected to the family, but I thought he was trying to suggest that I should reconcile with my parents, just like everyone else has been doing. Instead, what he told me amazed me and made me see everything in a new way that I had never experienced before. He began by mentioning that he had heard about the situation from family members and felt the need to contact me because it seemed that my parents had done similar things before. 20 years ago, something like this had happened between him and my father's parents, my grandparents. My uncle did not agree with their tricky ways, so they spread lies about him in the family, saying he tried to steal from them. He mentioned that at that time my dad did not support him. He actually supported their parents, causing a big disagreement between the two brothers that was never completely resolved. Uncle mentioned that he always felt like my dad had left him alone, and it took him a long time to accept how their family worked. Listening to him talk about the past felt like hearing my own story, but in a different situation. My grandparents had used money and manipulation to influence my uncle, just like my parents are trying to do with me now. As he talked more, everything began to make sense. My parents were not behaving like themselves, they were following a pattern that started before I was born. They had picked up this behavior from their parents, and my dad, who had been involved in his brother's situation years ago, was now acting like me. My uncle also mentioned that his refusal to comply with my grandparents' demands came with severe consequences. After the disagreement, my grandparents completely stopped supporting him, both with money and emotionally. They portrayed him as the odd one out in the family, and even now, some relatives continue to believe the false stories that my grandparents told about him. It was all about control, he said, and when they couldn't control him anymore, they erased him from their lives. Hearing my uncle's story gave me goosebumps. It was like seeing the same thing happening to me now. My parents were mad because I didn't want to participate in their plan. Instead of trying to see my side, they made the whole family go against me. I began to realize how strong this harmful pattern was and how deeply my parents believed they could manipulate their children. After my conversation with my uncle, I couldn't stop thinking about everything he had said. It made me think if, at the core, my father's actions were motivated by feeling guilty. Perhaps he realized that he had left his brother behind many years ago, and now he was attempting to defend his actions by using the same methods again. My parents based their relationship with Sarah and me on the belief that we had to repay them in some way. Anytime we didn't follow this expectation, they felt we were betraying them. As I kept thinking, it became clear that this wasn't about me. It was about them, their problems that were not solved, and the negative patterns they had picked up from their parents. After that, my family members continued to send me more messages. It was obvious that Sarah had been working extra hours to gather people against me. One of my cousins, whom I had always been close to, sent me a long text saying that I was being selfish and disrespectful for not appreciating everything my parents had done for me. She mentioned that there was still time to solve the issue. But I had to admit my mistake and say sorry before it was too late. Her message had the same words as everyone else's, and it was tiring to read. I discovered that I grew up in a family where love was not given unconditionally. Everything had conditions, whether it was getting money, receiving comfort, or even just enjoying a special occasion like a wedding. Now that I had decided not to follow their instructions, I was being excluded and left alone, just like my uncle was. After my uncle called, we sat down and had a lengthy conversation about what will happen next. He told me that no matter what happens, we'll get through this together, and that I don't owe anyone anything, not my parents, not Sarah, and certainly not the extended family members who had suddenly become armchair psychologists. He has always supported me, and for that I am extremely grateful. Even though Tom is with me, I still feel a bit unsure. My parents had affected me emotionally, and I still questioned if I was at fault. Was there a way to solve the problem without giving up my limits? I spent hours going back and forth in my head, trying to figure out if there was a path to reconciliation that didn't involve me sacrificing my own mental health. After that, something unusual occurred. My father left me a message on my phone. It was the first time he had tried to contact me directly since I had sent the letter. His voice sounded different. He didn't seem upset or bossy as I thought he would. Instead, he seemed exhausted. In the message, he mentioned he didn't want to argue anymore and was ready to have a conversation if I was willing. He didn't say sorry or admit what had happened, but it was obvious that something had changed. Perhaps he was beginning to understand that I wouldn't give up this time. I haven't replied yet. I feel like reaching out to him again to see if we can talk openly about everything. But another part of me thinks that this might just be another way to make me feel bad on purpose. I can't stop thinking about what my uncle said. They will never accept they are mistaken, because they believe they are right. If I choose to speak with my dad, I should be ready for the fact that things may stay the same. At the moment, I'm still trying to understand everything. I have a lot of information in my mind right now. Things my uncle told me, messages from my family, and a voicemail from my dad. I'm not sure what to do next. I hope my parents can change and start seeing me as their equal, not just as someone they can control. However, I am aware that fixing the harm caused by years of mistreatment will require more than just one conversation. Right now, I am dealing with things one day at a time. Tom and I have been concentrating on our lives and planning for our future together. We are working to create a positive and toxic-free relationship, different from the negative behaviors we learned from our families. But the uncertainty remains. Am I making the correct decision by not backing down? Am I distancing myself from the only family I have? Even though I really want a clear answer, I am still in the same situation. And perhaps that's fine. I will continue to inform you about any developments, but for now I am just trying to handle this situation the best I can. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude for all of your answers. Your guidance and help have been very important as I deal with this difficult situation with my family. When I first shared my thoughts, I was unsure about the direction or my goals. However, after reading your feedback and thinking about it, I have had some important insights. One thing that caught my attention in your answers was that many of you mentioned that I have been trying hard for a while to improve my relationship with my parents, pretending that everything was fine. However, I have come to terms with the fact that it's fine if things don't return to how they used to be because, to be honest, I'm not even sure what normal was. My relationship with my parents has always been bad, and I have tried to avoid thinking about it for years. Now, I realize that it's okay to let go of the idea that things will ever be the way I want them to be. A lot of you also pointed out that I might have been too forgiving in my assumptions about my dad's guilt. Thinking about the past, I realized that I was hoping that my dad's actions were caused by feeling guilty and that he could change. You were right. It doesn't justify his actions, and it doesn't excuse the years of manipulation, favoritism, and emotional control. Even if he feels sorry, it doesn't undo the damage or excuse him from responsibility. However, I also understood that I do need to find closure. I need to finish this part of my life, with or without making peace with my parents, so I chose to see my father. I felt like I needed to do it for myself, not for them, to find closure. When I saw my dad, I immediately noticed that he was not the same person I had been afraid of when I was younger. He looked tired and defeated, and for the first time ever, he seemed sorry. He didn't directly say I'm sorry, but he apologized for how things went at the wedding and how my mom and Sarah had treated me. He even mentioned that he had spoken to some of our relatives and asked them to stop bothering me, which was a small relief. But then, he did something that caught me off guard. He tried to return the money. He took out the check I had given him for the wedding costs and pushed it towards me, requesting me to keep it. He said that he and my mom talked about it and they wanted to fix things. But now, I was ready. I clearly told him that I would not be taking the money back. I made it clear that this wasn't just about the money, it was about everything that had happened over the years, the way I had always been treated as second best, and the emotional toll that had taken on me. I told him that getting the money back wouldn't solve the problem, and that this was no longer just about money. I could tell he was upset when I said no to the money. It was like he didn't have anything else to give me. I believed that giving back the money was his way of apologizing. But it didn't solve the underlying problems that had been growing for a long time. He couldn't see that the damage wasn't something that could be undone with a check. After I said I wouldn't accept the money, he stayed silent for a while, and then expressed that he didn't want to lose me. He mentioned he realized that the situation had become too serious, and he didn't want our family to break up. I could see he was trying to be honest. But at that time I understood I wasn't seeking to make things right, not as he desired. I wasn't interested in going back to the way things were or pretending like everything could magically be okay again. What I needed was some distance, a true pause from the unhealthy pattern that had characterized our relationship for a long time. I told him I needed some time away from the family, and that even though the meeting was important, it didn't make a big difference. I said that I wasn't ready to forgive and forget yet, and that I needed time to heal in my own way. He didn't disagree with me, which was unexpected. He simply nodded and said he got it. He didn't try to persuade me to return or say I was overreacting as he had done before. In a sense, that was more like saying sorry than any other words he could have used. After the meeting, I felt a strange combination of feelings. I wasn't mad, but I also wasn't calm. I thought I was looking for closure, but it's not as simple as we wish it to be. There was no clear solution, no dramatic coming together or emotional progress. It was fair, completed. I had expressed everything I needed to, and now it was my turn to keep going. Since then, I have done a few things to keep myself calm and happy. I have stopped some more relatives who were bothering me about the issue, and Tom and I are now concentrating on creating our life together without the ongoing family problems. It's been good to finally have some space to relax. But there is still a part of me that feels unsure. I am sure I did the correct thing by defending myself, but it's still hard. Sometimes I think about whether I could have done things in a different way, or if I should have given my parents another opportunity. But then I think about all the times I felt like I wasn't good enough, and I tell myself that I should have better things. Sarah hasn't contacted me since the meeting with my dad, as expected. I think she's still mad about what happened, but now I don't want to make things right with her. She has clearly shown where her loyalty is, and I have come to terms with the fact that our relationship will never reach its full potential. I'm fine with that now. Giving up the idea that we could ever be close has been hard, but it has also brought me a sense of freedom. Regarding my father, I am uncertain about what will happen next. He appeared truly regretful for what happened, but I'm not sure if that's sufficient to repair a relationship. Right now, I will keep concentrating on myself and my joy. If there's one lesson I've learned from all of this, it's that I need to prioritize myself for a change. I will do just that. So, I suppose that's the current situation. It's not the perfect ending I wanted, but it's the ending I required, and sometimes that's enough. Thank you again to everyone who has been following along and offering support. I appreciate it more than I can say.